In digital transformation, very simple agenda. I'll talk about what exactly it does, what are some of the enablers in today's world, and then the reality, what exactly the situation uh, is created or that comes across that doesn't let it happen the way we anticipate or the way we want, and then the key learnings. So let's dive into. Um, what I've drawn is broad finance org, all the boxes in green, and the boxes in peach are just a representation of rest of the function. It doesn't say that only finance exists, but just for the purpose of discussion. When you look at the CEO function in the traditional brick and mortar mostly, but even the IT organization, when the finance operations or anything that finance used to contribute to the organization or in terms of how organization interacts with finance, these were some of the actions. So if you see CEO, the way CEO looks at the rest of the organization is by way of management information system, and there are teams who provide inputs to CEO. Other functions, they use the need-based information processing, whether it's marketing or sales or IT, accordingly, they used to do. When we look at CFO at large, CFO owns financial processes and operations and everything around that. The teams divided into three broad categories. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have more, but the first line, which I will not touch base upon a lot because that has a lot of specialized function, tax, audit, investor relations, or treasury. The second vertical line is something that covers most of the finance operations part, whether we are talking of billing, account receivable, payroll, vendor payments, and so on. And the way these teams used to function, there are large team sizes who would handle all operations predominantly manually with the help of standardized reports and MIS with periodic and regular outputs. The third is more tactical, wherein we are looking at financial planning and analysis, finance controllers, commercial finance, and billing and AR to the extent they help in the organization understand their cash situation. So there, it may be quarterly budget outlook or semi-annual or annual forecasting and budgeting process with periodic reviews, and only towards the end of the period when all numbers are available would you know that whether the organization met its goal or it didn't, and so on and so forth. Covering all of this, risk management, a very important tool. You must have heard of value at risk. That also comes, which is of course part of banking industry, but also comes under the purview of risk management. For rest of the industry, within the realm of risk management, everything that may cause any deviation from the anticipated path used to get reviewed and estimated or noticed under this umbrella. For the entire organization, security, and I'm not talking of physical security here, this is data security and transaction security. There used to be standard protocols with different level of adoptions. This is what the organization used to look like. What digital transformation does is the restructuring of activities. From the organization structure point of view, the only change you will notice is a slight upward movement of CFO as compared to the previous situation. That doesn't mean that CFO is elevated in its role as compared to CMO or CTO. What it tells that the partnership between CEO and CFO has evolved so much that CFO is not only the owner of finance, but works as strategic input to the CEO. Now, individually, I'll quickly run through the boxes. So just to give an example, to explain the chart, the text within the boxes tells how is the situation moved from earlier position to the current position post-transformation. And all the text in blue tells the technologies engaged in making that happen. So for example, in CEO, instead of getting the standard MIS by way of established teams, he gets converged data, large amount of it in varied form, but very small team to help CEO extract the data that he wants. So he has very easy to use, easy to implement, graphic user interface driven, everything available at his fingertips. And similarly, when you look at CFO, it's not about the periodic review of numbers, but he has on his or she has on his fingertips the holistic data review, including historicals as well as simulated output for the imminent and medium term future. I'm not talking of long term because that, given the outside scenario, that's not something that gets reviewed too often. Analytics, Internet of Things, AI and ML is something that helps CEO to move to this situation, and business intelligence, AI, ML, digital assistant, and robotic process automation is something which is contributing to CFO's movement in role. Similarly, the transactional process has moved to self-service instead of many people, large teams working on manual data manipulation to give the periodic output. They are just ensuring that the transaction is being captured accurately by the system, and then everything that anyone wants as an output, they can get it as they want. Faster, repetitive tasks. I spoke about robotic process automation. Here also, optical character recognition or bots or digital assistants, these are the key technologies contributing to this movement. Similarly, a very critical role, which has a tactical and strategic input, FP&A and so on. The forecast has moved from periodic exercise. The exercise is still continues to be periodic, but its evaluation and adjustment happens at all times. The forecast accuracy has become higher. With the predictive capability by way of analytics, they can adjust it much faster and with a higher accuracy. Risk management has become much more efficient with inclusion of external data, unstructured data type, and the capability to analyze them. Security has enhanced. We have all heard of blockchain. That structure as well as similar solutions have contributed to enhance the security. Just to quickly summarize in terms of the what actually has driven, how it has happened, the fundamental change, and that keeps on happening, is creating new baseline, wherein a fundamental change in the baseline technology. In the current context, a close example may be a Web3 in blockchain and so on. And mostly by way of evolution of in-use factor. What I mean to say that your basic structure remains the same. The solution type, its delivery changes, and some of the parameters are the extent of automation and new structure or new form factors like blockchain. But I put in a question mark because it is still evolving, and there are conflicts in opinion and extent of implementation for multiple reasons. We'll not discuss them here. Whether it's financial or it is strategic, again, as we saw that CFO's role has evolved from just finance, head of finance, to strategic partner to the CEO. So that's one of the key parameters. Increasing dynamicity, we want to do more, and that's fundamental contribution of technology in the digital transformation, to be able to do more with very high volume of input, diverse input, and do it more efficiently. Very clearly, movement is towards self-service. No more situation wherein CFO or CEO asking for output and someone works for a week to give the answer. Many a times they want things at their fingertips, and if they want any answer, they should be able to do it in a much easier way. Movement of plug and play to SaaS models, software as a service, and to new service delivery models. And with the advent of technology and newer players coming in at multiple positions of the value chain, the service delivery models are also evolving. So every day we see new kind of hybrid situation. So that's contributing to the technology as well. Shorter life cycle of development. Now, what it is doing is that newer players are entering the market. They are enabling unbundling of capability. So earlier, if let's say an ERP system handling end-to-end from point A to point B, To enhance the speed of development, you have newer player who might pick up one of the element and do it more efficiently and getting a lot of market for their size. And that ball rolling creates a disruption in that particular model of movement from A to B. And when a lot of players enter, they restructure or reconfigure the entire life cycle process. And then a rebundling happens by another new entrant. And then again, which from the original movement from A to B would give a much faster, much more efficient, much more accurate output. And this entire cycle, rediscovery of life cycle of development continues. In effect, gives the benefit to the digital transformation as expected. And of course, widening of data spectrum, right from intuitive data analysis to cleaning up of data mess. And we'll see some example of that. So this is an overview of what's happening in terms of the digital transformation. But there are huge challenges. I've taken this slide from, or I've prepared this on the basis of a McKinsey report, and there's a lot of literature around that. Intuitively, the sentence looks really wrong, but this is truth. Transformation success is an exception, not a rule. So with everything that I've spoken in the last 3 slides, which appears so rosy, moving the organization from one level to another, appears so lucrative, but it's very difficult to achieve in reality. And as per the report, the potential for value loss in a transformation, it starts from day one. It's instead of saying it's not easy, I would rather say it's not as effective, or it's quite ineffective. And the report talks of various aspects about the number of steps, number of transformation steps organizations take, and so on. This chart is a presentation of to what extent which organizations start to lose value at what point in time. You can say right from day one in the target setting, 22% of the times the value lost is in the target settings phase, and so on and so forth. And we are talking in financial terms at the level of EBITDA. So if you see the key callouts on the basis of their research, even the organizations that say that they have been successful in undertaking digital transformation, they have realized only 67% of the maximum financial benefits that the transformation was slated to achieve. And all of the rest of the organization is 37%. So your spectrum of success in terms of achieving the financial benefits out of your transformation spans from 67% and below, and more is skewed towards below, evidently. If you see the report, you'll get more insights. So what really happened? I forgot to mention, but I was just in light of how we look at the case, I used the name ABC Limited. So in my first section, I used just the name, but I spoke about the structure of digital transformation. So what really might have gone wrong with ABC Limited, despite being an early mover in financial transformation, something that McKinsey also spoke about and we discussed in the last slide. So here, it got struck with multiple inhibitors, some of which are observed as these pointers. They took one transformation initiative with a targeted increase in customer experience, but when they check, they realized the customer experience did not improve as much as was anticipated. That is a result. Second, transformation resulted into technology framework looking more complex than it was before transformation. See, we spoke about everything become faster, easier, but we ended up with transformation structure, giving the output which is more complex. I'm sure many of you who would have the work experience would have sensed this also, that when organization move from one system, one system to another, somehow the systems do not completely go out of the organization. Some old data might still remain in some system, which will be in some shape or form of the old system, reminiscent of that. the neo system is also working, and there are some intermittent system or some temporary patchwork, and everything is staying together. If you want a historical data for 4 years, go into that system. If you want today's data, the current system will give, and intermittently some reviews would have happened, which a third system will provide. So the complexity has increased. Third, attrition. We have seen the great resignation recently, and that creates a lot of challenge for the organization. Employees are not able to keep up with the technology skills, with new things coming every other day. If you have read the book from Thomas Friedman, Thanks for Being Late, I remember in the hardbound book, if I'm not wrong, on page 56, there's a graph which tells that it's impossible to upkeep with the technological progress. It's humanly impossible. So what do? We have to undertake and make digital transformation happen, but employees will continue to lack in the technology skills to make the best use of it. But for the organization, it creates a gap in terms of the value that the transformation provides with. Finally, within this point, any attrition, the employee carries a lot of tribal knowledge, which is not cataloged, which is not accounted for, and everyone comes into the backfill role, starts to discover those things afresh. That again creates a lot of challenge for ABC Limited. Very clearly, many of the transformation projects not yielding any result. Leave aside the first point, which was did not improve as much, but the results, for some of them, are at the level 0. And finally, integration nightmare. Why? You may have multiple ERP systems. Your ERP system for sales, for finance might be different. The interface between them is not easy. And God forbid, if the organization and ABCL did that, acquire a third company for which the sales ERP is different from what ABC is having, then another nightmare starts. Now, that's one level of challenge. The another challenge is that for some reason, a particular ERP is not working well. Maybe the organization that provided the ERP was not very great, and they are in all sorts of trouble. So they are not keeping pace with the market. So they want to change. This changeover is not very easy. So this is the other side of the coin, wherein we have spoken about the digital transformation, but this tells that maybe out of 100%, you will achieve 30 to 40%. So what really went wrong here? So Mr. Digital, who becomes a new CFO, looks at this and identifies what really did not work. The first one, customer experience did not improve as much as possible. Now, he finds out that the reason is the tech implementation focused on features and not customer experience. It's easier said than done. Why? Because any transformation starts with a purpose. But when you are entering into a contract with a solution provider does not work on purpose, but solution provider works on activities that they have to undertake. So they will always do it in the form of features. But there's a continuous gap between the features that get delivered and the objective which was conceptualized. And that's why, if you remember the graph from McKinsey on the slide, the maximum value loss of transformation happens during implementation. Let's look at the second point. Overall technology framework looking more complex than it was before transformation. So he realized the required paradigm shift did not happen. It was more like piecemeal solution, something like Lego blocks. You change few blocks from the original structure and place few new blocks. But still, it has same or more number of blocks as it had earlier. So again, going to the point one, what it led to, the experience which were anticipated to be seamless did not materialize at all. What about employees? Why they are not up to the mark? Again, the challenge is the culture. Uh, the more experienced the employees are, the more challenging it becomes to unlearn and relearn. The training, the focus on training for continuous upgrade remains a challenge. The process and control to capture the tribal knowledge so that even the person who is attriting how to kind of create a backup, how to capture all the knowledge, that requires a paradigm shift. And while all the organizations want themselves to be called and to behave like a learning organization, this remains a continuous problem. Transformation projects not yielding any results related to the first point, the change of process and customer experience were not correlated. The process start with some interpretation and some understanding as to enhance the customer experience. These are the activities we need to undertake. And then those activities are undertaken and the customer experience does not improve. The first place itself was faulty, wherein the evaluation may or may not have worked well. And again, there's a parallel story on the side of solution providers. We will not touch base upon that, but that's a critical and important piece to this success as well. An integration nightmare. This is actually a very specialized situation in itself. The only overarching theme is that it's a trade-off between taking simple route as compared to the right steps. What does it mean? For any integration, the example that we spoke about, two ERP systems, I'm not talking of acquisition, I'm talking of two ERP systems within the same organization, let's say sales and finance. If they are not talking to each other, maybe the type of data capture is different, the level of data capture is different. The merger of those two data sets rarely puts the organization in a situation where they go back to those ERP and rectify them. What it does is create a patchwork between them so that that problem is solved for the time being. But for any future problem, it creates even more complex situation and the nightmare just continues. What do we do? Now, this is not a kind of all-encompassing solution because every situation for the organization, for the type of problem, present itself in a really different mode. But some principal guidelines must be followed so that the loss of transformation value can be minimized to the extent possible in current situation, wherein it is to the extent of 33%, it should be brought down to less than 10%. Then only the real change that the transformation is set out to do or set out to achieve. We all know ABCL can't survive without transformation, but the right way is something which can help them embrace it to the benefit of all stakeholders, employees, customers, and vendors alike. We don't talk much about vendors. One of the reasons being the predictability is high. We think we know when are we going to pay the vendors. So that is the reason. But that also makes a very important input for the cash forecast. So it's important to consider them as well. Now, if you are part of a technology provider, where you are a vendor to the organization, providing or managing the ERP solution or helping to reduce the complexity, the way to work is that you are part of the growth story. You are either part of a new solution or creating new link between the existing solution or providing fundamental new platform in itself. It's a little conflict of interest. Why? Because as a technology provider, you need to provide the solution, which is again, I use the term features in the previous slides, get the money, get out of it. But if you really want to be part of the growth story, as most of the vendors claim, then this is how you need to work in partnership. If you are CFO or part of the CFO organization directly, it's a huge opportunity. As we saw in the slides where I presented the finance framework, CFOs have a higher or better or more important role to play in today's context. So the opportunity to drive digital transformation is maximum with CFO. So need to leverage it well. The important part of that is to identify right success indicators for solutions. We saw the example we discussed, so it's very important right from the level one where we are looking at the target setting. The success indicators, the review frequency, the type of review, the steps to correct the mistakes, all of that have to be really dynamic with the fundamental objective of improving the operations. And when we are saying improving, it has to be faster, but very importantly, ease of doing the operations and ease of achieving integration. It is more important than doing things faster or getting more features. And of course, if you're part of the rest of the organization, be the part of the solution that CFO is trying to achieve. It's very important and differentiator. So overarching theme is look for simple from the technology point of view. And when I'm saying simple, it has to be easy of operations as well as ease of integration to the extent possible. Spearhead, always go for new technology. We saw that. ABCL can't survive without transformation. And going for new technology will continue to keep you at the forefront of getting the best out of what is available. And self-serviceable solutions. As much as possible, minimal reliant on external parameters, on external individuals or external participants. It has to be done by you. You have been able by your employees and yourself by continuous learning. So with that, I conclude what I had to present and would open it up for other questions.
So those who want to ask questions, you may please raise your hand electronically so that Raj can see. First question, I think Alok Kumar.
Hi, I'm from EPGP program, and regarding the challenges which you were talking about, so my question to you is that looking at all the different parameters, would it be good to go for a greenfield transformation? Because in that case, there will be a complete change in the structure. There will be no old hierarchical systems. So what is your suggestion in that? Do you suggest greenfield rather than greyfield transformations?
See, while that is advisable, but it's not feasible most often than not. Why? Because unless you are a startup or you are a nascent organization growing big, you will not be in a situation where you don't have a solution already existing in the organization. And if you want to replace it completely with a entirely new platform, you are on one side, you might actually refresh everything and create ease of operation. But on the other side, you're increasing the risk of implementation, increasing the connectivity that you already have established. You have a lot of historical information and a lot of historical data pertaining to operations and finance. Bringing that into the new system will become that much more challenging and creating more risk. So you will not be in a position at all times to go in a greenfield transformation. In which situation, you will have to find the right way to undertake the transformation initiatives on the top of your existing structure.
Okay, means if the organization is a bit old, they have old legacy systems. In that case, perhaps we can think about. But if it has already adopted cloud or other technologies, then we can maybe go for some process improvement and all those things, right?
Okay, there's a question: should finance digital transformation team be part of finance team or central digital team? That's a nice question. Normally, any transformation team works more like a task force that includes experts from finance, IT, who are designated to that team, and from business. It normally does not include people from sales, but it's always advisable to include sales and marketing in the loop. So whether you call it part of finance team or central digital team, uh, it has to include all experts. As regards reporting structure is concerned, it varies from organization to organization. Typically, in the older organization that are in existence for about 15, 20 years or more, they have a structure for digital transformation. And normally, they create a new team with a new leadership. But with the nascent organization, it depends. It depends upon who holds more important place or situation. An organization which is on a really high growth path, typically they create new teams for this particular purpose. You may call that central digital team, but then of course, this may report into IT organization. That should not be the case.
So Raj, I have a question. In terms of preparing the students for this role in companies, what kind of courses are useful in addition to whatever we are doing? One. Second is that if the existing courses need to have a separate module like your standard finance courses, which you also did when you were here, would you recommend a completely new course altogether, or is it that existing courses should have a separate module on digital transformation? So what would you recommend?
Yes, I believe that digital transformation should start as a new initiative, as a new course. Again, the reason being, what we study is finance as a function. So if I'm looking at FP&A, or if I'm looking at, even for that matter, operations, what we study in the institute as to how it is undertaken. Or on the part of systems, we read or we learn as to how that system, what kind of benefit it provides. What the gap that exists is how to undertake those transformations, how to actually implement that. If we are talking of integration is an Achilles heel across the organization. So how to ensure that when these two situations or these two modules are talking to each other, how to implement that best. And one of a very, very critical piece, which is many of the organizations, in fact, the report says most of the organizations struggle with how to manage your employees, how to ensure that your systems and controls and employees training is up to the mark. So this is evolving as a very, very, as the previous question asked, sir, that whether the central digital team or finance should own it, but any big transformation, digital transformation, is housed under a very separate team that may be in the form of task force or continuous organizational structure. So I think overall a new course would make them better prepared.
There's one more question in the chat box if you want to take a look at it.
The question is how to take care of future possible inorganic growth. Do you recommend different greenfield and separate ERPs? I would not necessarily suggest a different greenfields, but not separate ERPs as well. Just to give you an example, let's say an organization A acquires another organization B, and from the finance system, one may have system A, let's say NetSuite, and another one may have IBM, Cognos or TM1. Now, what do you do? Because those systems will need to be synchronized. It's always advisable to go for uniform systems unless there's a case. For example, if these two are completely diverse business, then the data or the information can be merged at a higher level. But if they are working on a similar grounds, if a technology company, software product company has acquired another software product company, which is just to enhance their bouquet, then definitely the ERPs should talk to each other and it should be similar. So one of the ERP has to be modified. There's one more question. Does digital transformation has dependency on age of the organization? E.g., predictive modeling or forecast might have higher inaccuracy for startups. How to think about digital transformation in startups? Not really. It depends upon the agility of the organization. I have seen organizations who are in existence for 40 years, but they're extremely agile. And I've seen organizations who are just about 15 to 20 years old, and they have a much bigger challenge of integration. See, it's It starts from something that we learn in Six Sigma: do things right in the first step. So even for an organization which may be 15 years old, it might have a baggage of not appropriate steps for last 5 to 6 years, and it just keeps on ballooning. So that is one part of the answer to the first question. The example that you gave actually points to a different situation. When you're saying predictive modeling or forecast might have higher inaccuracy for startups, I would kind of disagree. In earlier situations, when you're doing predictive modeling, you are trying to look at historicals and you are profiling your historicals to forecast for future. To tell you frankly, we do that just because it's easier to do that. But today, with so much external data available, even from the startup that has not been in operations for even 1 year, you can do a fairly accurate forecast. But if you have studied market well, you really know what is your value proposition, and you do your forecast accordingly. So the second question actually is slightly different. And I've seen the second question is being tamed by organization without any bearing from their age. So if you are talking of digital transformation in startup, I think the second S that I spoke about in my last slide, spearhead. So to start with, always pick up the spearhead technology. How to implement this is something that you have to be fairly on top of it at all points in time. You cannot have a monthly review or a quarterly review to see where you are going. You have to be on the top of the movement at all points in time.
Hello, Raj. Vikas Bansal. I am really
Yes.
sorry. I got late for some reason. Professor Ganesh, I saw his message. I knew I had to join in, and then I had some urgent call. So even I got delayed by 20-25 minutes. And by the time I came in, the curtains were nearly down. So
Good to see you, Vikas. Thanks for
hello,
joining.
sir.
Okay, so if there are no more questions relating to the topic, not sure. Sanjay has a question, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, Sanjay, yeah, go ahead.
It says
You
what
answer that question.
of process standards help expedite or aid digital transformation of financial organizations? Are there an example of latest research done in this area? Please share. Sanjay, this is actually evolving world. So if you talk of technologies or now process standards is slightly different field than technologies. That will take some time. I'll not touch base upon process standards. But from technologies, if you just do a Google search today, in terms of, let's pick up anything, pick up any ERP or value chain, let's say for the financial process. You just do the Google, who are the participants and what are the technologies in offering, and you do the same thing 2 months from now, you will see a significant change in that. So this is evolving continuously with new players coming in, old players modifying or updating their technologies. So in terms of this, any research done, if you find that any research, that will become outdated really, really fast. So how to meet this challenge is someone, or in fact, whosoever is part of the digital transformation team has to be on the top of the objective, how you are going to implement, which technology you are going to adopt. And don't bother about the technological movement. You will have to refresh it after a certain point in time. Just take an example, the phone. Whichever phone you buy, in 6 months' time, you will see the next generation phone is coming. But then, of course, after 1 or 2 years, you are going to refresh your phone anyways, right? So till such time, use the current phone with the best of its capability.
Okay, I think we are almost out of time. So we will stop the Q&A now. So let us see. There's one more question. I think Ganesh Modi has some
Suggestion. Yeah, I think, sir, that's a valid suggestion, because in today's context, where India is a hotbed of generating new startups, it's really important to drive knowledge around digital transformation. Finance is an obvious partner, but then for students to know it better. Thanks
Sure,
for the suggestion.
Thanks, Raj, once again.